All right, well, we will call the meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Linda.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Here.
Glenn Sarka, James Hewitt,
Here.
Jennifer Cliff,
Here.
Jennifer Ray,
Here.
Cheryl Maddox-Smith,
Here.
Jason Zajunik,
Here.
Okay, and I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
All right, motion made by Mr. Zadunik, support by Ms. Ray. All those in favor?
Aye.
I would also entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 2nd, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will support.
All right, motion made by Mr. Hewitt, support by Mr. Zadunik. All those in favor? Aye. All right, moving on to business. We will start with the audit report. Mr. Lampman?
Thank you. I hope everybody's doing well this evening in spite of the time change that has impacted me greatly. I'm sure has the same effect on some others. So normally I would do just a small presentation to the Appropriations Committee, but since we're having a Committee of the Whole in light of appropriations, am I good, Nick? Get closer. I'm getting the sign. Okay, I can hear me, but that's great. How's this? Great. Better? Okay. But in light of the Committee of the Whole, I thought it'd be a good thing to bring it to the full board. So we did have our audit completed this past week, and it was filed timely. And we will be having a formal audit presentation by our auditor at the next regular meeting on the 27th of November. And I'm rambling a little, but I did promise Zach I would try to keep this down to under an hour. So in your packet, you should have a copy of a PowerPoint presentation. So I'll just walk through really quick, hopefully, the results of the audit. So starting on the first page, I'd like to direct your attention to an excerpt from the auditor's opinion letter for 22-23. In their opinion, the financial statements referred to are presented fairly in all material respects in the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the school district as of June 30, 2023. They did give us an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get under governmental accounting. Moving on to the general fund. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Let me, I forgot, Zach. Mr. Sedgwick gave me the ability to control the PowerPoint. So looking at the general fund, we'll start by looking at the general fund revenues. So here we have the final budget, actual revenue, budget to actual, percent budget to actual, and then last column, a one-time MIPSRS payment that we'll talk about. So general fund, we had revenues of $45,915,000 approved in the final budget. We came in at $47,996,000. That's about a $2 million variance. That's largely due to this one-time MIPSRS payment. So the state of Michigan adopted Public Act 3 of 2023 this year, And in that act, the state designated a one-time payment to address the state's unfunded pension liability. If I recall, it was about $1 billion that they were allocating. And there was discussion at one point about moving this money through one district or one ISD. In the end, they wound up breaking it out. So we were required to record a one-time payment as an in and an out. So it came into revenue, went out through our expense. So the net effect for us was zero, but it still hit our revenue and expense. And that wasn't factored into our final budget. So that's the large part of our variance in our general fund revenues. Other than that, we were pretty much on target with budget with our local revenues, 12.8 million versus 12.4. Federal revenues, we came pretty close, 4.1 million versus 4.2 million. So we underspent our federal revenues a little bit. As you may recall in the past, I've said that our COVID money, we were really trying to exhaust it all by June 30. We fell a little bit short. We have about 175,000 that will be carrying over into this next fiscal year. But we came very close to exhausting our COVID dollars. The other thing I'd like to say about federal revenues is looking back historically, when I look at 2019, 2020, that year we had about 830,000 worth of federal awards. And as of this year, we had about 4.7 million in federal awards. So we've had a lot of federal money coming through the district in a very short period of time that we've had to manage. And I've said it before to the board, it's been a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge. So that's the general fund revenue. Moving on, again, just a bit of an explanation as to some of the changes. We had the big one is the one-time MIPSRS payment. Without that, we would have been within 0.3% of our final budget, within 136,000. Grants, as I mentioned, we had over 30 federal and state grants that we had to manage this year. It's kind of an unusual year. We keep getting grants. And again, as I mentioned, we're carrying over some of our COVID dollars into 23, 24. We had 153,000 worth of ESSER 3 and 20,000 worth of 11T COVID dollars that we'll be carrying over. Looking at our expenses in the general fund, we had budgeted $44,285,000. We came in at $46,373,000. Again, about a $2 million variance, which is largely our one-time MIPSRS payment. Looking at instruction, we came in under budget about $1 million. We've continued to budget for vacant positions that have not been eliminated, so it's largely the variance there. So again, looking at salaries and benefits, the salaries were below budget, as were benefits. Looking at, and we discussed the one-time MIPSRS payment. Without that, we would have been again at 0.3% of budget, or 143,000. And we also had a transfer to capital projects of 3.1 million. As Mr. Sedgwick has pointed out in the past, we have about $100 million worth of identified infrastructure needs within the district. And so we have some money set aside for an emergency. Right now, for instance, we're running off one boiler at the high school, and if that were to go down, you're talking over $1 million for a boiler replacement. And as you may recall, we've already had some emergencies pop up this year, such as the sinkhole at Bothwell. There was an issue at Superior Hills with a storm sewer. We've got a sinkhole over at the athletic field. So So this is just some set aside for some future capital outlay expenditures that have yet to be identified, but we do have some emergencies that pop up from time to time. Continuing to look at the general fund expenditures, this is by object. So we're looking at salaries, benefits, purchase services. Again, same information, just in a slightly different format. So looking at the general fund as a whole, you can see our beginning unassigned fund balance was about 8.2 million. We had 47,996,000 in revenues, 46 million, 300. I told Linda earlier I did not have enough caffeine today. 46,373,000 in expenditures, resulting in our ending equity broken down as non-spendable, 123,000, which is prepaids. Restricted, 66,000. That's for Kaufman. Committed items, 4.8 million. That is our contingency, our required contingency under the policy, board policy. We have 2.8 million assigned for projects, including MTSS. And that results in an unassigned fund balance of $7,735,666 that would be available for use by the district. Looking at food service, we came in pretty much on par with where we thought with local revenues. State revenues were down a little bit. Federal revenues came in a little bit higher. This being the first year back with having a fully funded food service program, because if you recall, the year before it was paid for by the federal government. We were trying to dial in what those numbers looked like, and so now moving into 23-24, it's back to being fully funded by a combination of the federal government and the state. So we're still working on dialing this in, but we had projected a net loss of $29,361. We came in at a net loss of $77,133. So looking at the food service fund overall, we started with a beginning fund balance of $795,000. We had revenues of $1.4 million, expenses of $1.49 million, resulting in an ending equity of $717,000. We do have an excess fund balance in our food service fund. By formula, we should be under $500,000. We're not alone. Going through COVID with the fully funded federal meals program, there are about 500 districts in the state that wound up building up a fund balance in their school lunch fund. So we've been working with MDE on a spend down plan to bring us back in compliance with that. But again, there's about 500 other districts in the state that have the same issue that they're working through. And the added challenge is that now that we're in 23-24 and the state's fully funding that program, we're probably going to have a bit of an issue in continuing to spend that down. But we're working with MDE on it. Debt service fund. This is basically just an in and out. We collect our taxes for our 2016 bond that was used for the athletic field. And we make the bond payment out of this fund. So it's basically just an in and out. Our actual tax dollars came in at $673,000, a little bit higher than what we were projecting. We tend to be a little more conservative, though, in our projections. Expenditures were on par, about $640,000 for the bond principal and interest payment. So we came in with a net income of $33,584 in our debt service fund, resulting in a fund balance of $203,492. Capital projects fund. We're on par with our local revenues. which is basically earnings on investments, transfers in. We're looking at 3.1 million, so $3,139,000 in net income to the Capital Projects Fund, resulting in a fund balance of $4,288,000. Sinking fund. So again, our actual tax dollars came in a little bit higher than we anticipated, $1,195,000 in tax revenue. Expenditures were a little bit lower. Coming into year end, not all the projects start when you think they will in June, and so we anticipated a few extra expenditures in June that didn't materialize till later, so they'll be picked up this 23-24 year. So our expenditures were $631,000, resulting in net income of $564,000 to the sinking fund, and an ending fund balance of $1,201,000. This is earmarked for projects that we already have in the works, like the HVAC unit at Bothwell. You're all familiar with the elevator project at Gray Verret, and numerous other projects that we have in the works. And then the scholarship fund, this one bounces around a little bit year to year. We'd estimated $119,000 in revenues and expenditures. Actual revenues came in at $110,000. Expenditures were pretty close at $120,500. So overall net loss of just under $10,000 in the scholarship fund. So results were $305,000 in ending equity in that fund. There were two items that came up during the audit that they commented on. So we have one financial statement finding. The auditors did a sample of our payroll. They tested 40 employees. And in that sample, there was one employee who had a special non-contract pay related to virtual teaching related to COVID. And with all the staffing turnover that we had this past year, we couldn't find the supporting documentation for that particular payment for that employee. As the auditors point out, everything else for that employee was appropriately documented for the regular contract, but we just weren't able to turn up the support for one payment. And then the other comment was related to our federal awards. There were two programs that they tested this year. One was our Title I Part A program. The other was our ESSER III COVID dollars. And as I've mentioned in the past, it was a challenge spending, close to $4.7 million in federal awards this year. One of the challenges, and I've mentioned this to the board in the past, is a lot of these grants that we were awarded during the year all had the same purpose. And as we got new grants, they became more restrictive. So people that we had charged to, say, our ESSER III grant, maybe made more sense to be charged to our 11T grant that was more restrictive, with their purpose lined up better with this grant. So we wound up shuffling the deck on staff, and in doing so, we didn't have everything documented as far as the semi-annual certification that was required for these individuals. There was nothing with Title I that they came back with. They thought Title I was very well documented, but just the staffing shuffle that we had on our COVID grants, there were some employees that just didn't properly have their time documented. So those were the two comments that came up in the audit. And again, I'll field any questions, but we'll also have the partner from Anderson Tackman here at our next regular meeting if you do have any questions for the auditors related to the audit.
on the capital auditor, or the capital projects fund transfers in, the amended and actual was $1 million off about, is that right? What
So-
was the,
So the difference is, we had left in the vacant positions in the budget. So we took the savings in the budgeted vacancies, and that was included in the transfer to capital projects.
how can it jump from what's basically staff to something for capital projects? How does that, what's the,
So, so MDE looks at it overall. They're not looking on a line item basis. Yeah, when MDE makes an assessment of the budget, they're looking at total expenditures overall. So they're not taking it down to the line item level.
so it could have gone in anywhere as a net gain?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions?
The MEPSERS payment, is that essentially just a pass-through that comes in and we pay that out towards the liability for the pensions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
For the MEPSER payment, is that essentially just a pass-through where the state provides that and then we pay that towards the pension?
Correct. So the state, MIPSERS is the state pension for school employees. It's managed by the state, and so they wanted to make a one-time deposit into that, but they wanted, in the end, they wanted that deposit to funnel through the district. So they broke it down into an allocation and said, well, every district's going to report your share. So it came through our state aid report just as an in and an out. So the net effect on our books was 0 overall. It was just an accounting measure that the state used in order to make the deposit.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Lampman? All right, moving on to athletics, pay to play.
Thank you. So back in September, the 12th of September, that is, we had a conversation at appropriations in regard to pay to play. And as part of that conversation, we're asked to do a little bit of research to determine, I'll just say in short, the cost for students, cost for the district, and what savings or what we could do for families to make that burden or that cost a little more palpable. So as you know, we're using the committee of the whole structure rather than appropriations to have some of these conversations. So that is why we're bringing it to this meeting. And I asked Mr. Zdunek to more or less give a summary or a synopsis of where this topic is coming from, since I think it's fair that he was leading the conversation. And at this point, I'll turn it over to him and let him give a summary.
Thank you, Mr. Cedric. So one of the things I asked to have looked at was the current pay-to-play fee structure that we have at Marquette Area Public Schools. And I've had a lot of individuals reach out that they thought that was a little high. So one of the things that I wanted to look at to have substantiated whether or not that is accurate was to get a breakdown through our athletic director through an MHSAA participation fee survey there was a significant response to that survey. Currently, we have a family cap of $800 per family for participation fees. Individual sport ranges between $100 to $600. The survey showed that 59%, and that was pretty consistent over the prior 3 years, between 58, 59, and 60% of respondents were not assessing a fee for pay to play. And for those schools that were assessing a fee, the median per student annual maximum fee per student breakdown was a median of $150. The annual maximum per fee family was $350. The fee per team student breakdown, the median cost was $100. So it just showed that we are a little high in those areas. So certainly, I think it shows that it's something that I think we can address through the board. I know there's, I had a lot of conversations behind the scenes. I talked to Mr. Sedgwick, ways that we can try to address this. And there's been a lot of good ideas. And so this would be a great opportunity if somebody has a better idea. I found that it was kind of difficult because nobody, it was hard. Nobody really wanted to come to a starting point and then have that conversation. But I think, for me, I would love to see the pay to play be a part of that 59 or 60% and get rid of that. But obviously that's, would be difficult. And so one way to at least begin that conversation, I'd like to bring forth 2 items. One would be to eliminate the entrance fee for full-time MAPS staff to attend an athletic event. And then number 2, eliminate the student cost to attend a sporting event or extracurricular event. Additionally, one way to potentially address this would be to provide a scholarship. So every student is eligible for an annual scholarship of $200 per student to go towards those fees that are currently assessed with the current pay-to-play fee schedule. So it would just basically knock off the first $200. Depending on the sport, it might cover the sport. There still might be some costs associated with that, but at least it would help to bring us a little bit more in line with what we see based on the respondent surveys, again, which seems to be pretty consistent over the last 3 years, and again, showing that we're a little on the high side on that scale.
Can I ask you something, just because I guess I didn't quite understand what you're saying. When you took a look and asked the question, you're saying that on average, we're looking at a $300 cap in the state by average. Is that what you're saying? I missed, this is mathy, so you're gonna have to go real slow with me. I can teach you to read, but this is now math, so I'm out of my element. And then it was on average 150 per student. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, essentially, yes. So the annual maximum fee per family, on average for those that do charge, which again, almost 60% don't charge anything, but those that do, the 40% of schools that do charge, okay, which we would be in that 40%.
Sure.
Okay. We right now have a cap of $800, and the average or the median of those 40% that did respond, or specifically, I think it's 41% based on this one that do charge, do have a median family cap of $350.
And then by average, you're looking at 150 per student for that 40% that do charge pay to play.
The one-time fee per student breakdown, the median was $120. I think a little bit more of a concurrent or way that we could measure ourselves too was the fee per team breakdown, which the median was $100 of those that do charge per sport, and right now we charge between $100 and $600, $100 and $600 per sport. So again, just to break those numbers down. So
Thanks.
does that
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Mr. Tizio, Mr. Wheeler, did you guys have some comments or want to jump in with any of this, or?
You all have questions as part of your dialogue, I'm happy to, or clarifications on pay-to-play policy and what the sport fees look like, what the spread is. Right now our pay-to-play fee breakdown, you have those fees ranging from the $100 fee associated with bowling. Most are ranging between 100 and, you want a mic or you good? I'm good, okay. Most are ranging between 100 and about 250, and then of course you've got hockey being an outlier there with a $600 fee annually.
And those fees are based on the cost, the fact that maybe hockey has to travel more than bowling?
You've got your travel expenses, you've got any facility use
Right.
expenses, namely ice time being very expensive. Your coaching costs are rolled in there, and then a very, very humble miscellaneous supplies budget.
And are our costs driven also by the need to maybe go downstate for competition because we lack the large schools in our area?
Not necessarily. We have our competition schedules that, and so, hockey being a fair example, we have the ability to field a UP schedule if that's
Right.
what we're looking for. But, hockey elects to make some of those extra trips, and so it's almost a combination of whatever that UP schedule would cost, but then the rest being supplemented by team fundraising to help get us to those kind of more desired events.
Right.
So, I'm sorry.
Nope.
In my experience, both teaching and, way back when I was a student, we had giant athletic boosters clubs, right? That worked together to serve, a variety of sports. They were all sort of spearheaded under that umbrella of an athletic boosters club, and you had a variety of parents and business leaders and grandparents all working under the same umbrella to serve all the kids regardless of the sport. Certainly where I work has a really robust athletic boosters club where I attended school, I still remember the people in charge way back when, and it's been my experience at the two other districts I worked at. Can you talk about the history of that? I do find it interesting that with sports being such a, it is everywhere, but we have a really robust sports culture up here. And the fact that we're not, seeing spaghetti dinners and 50-50s and it's all sort of itemized club by club or team by team kind of seems counterproductive. Could you talk about the history of athletic boosters here? Or?
Max has had an all-sports booster club, and the last time that we've seen our all-sports booster club in operation, I would say 8-9 years ago now. And,
Was it successful? Was it a robust?
at that time, it was 4 individuals serving in those officer capacities.
Just 4 folks?
Far longer than they should have. So the
Wow.
ability to identify that next volunteer up and just general volunteerism as a whole is something that we struggle with.
Yeah.
Volunteerism at games where we change
Sure.
football, sport table at basketball. It's very, if the option is write a $100 check or volunteer at a few basketball games, I'll have a lot of checks.
So right now we just sort of have, I know we have like the Gridiron Club for football, but we just have these itemized micro booster clubs. Is that kind of how this is working?
Focus for those trying to organize these initiatives have not been collectively towards the whole. It's been, I want to focus on what's going to benefit my student.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Mr. Lampman, I think you were asked in this past week to provide us some historical numbers too about revenues and expenditures that go towards athletics. And I don't remember exactly how far it went back. Was it maybe to 2018 or 19, something like that? But obviously 2020 and 21 were very odd years for many reasons, but the impact of COVID led to many less attendees to sporting events, no concession sales, stuff like that. So I think from what I saw in those reports anyway, is that in the short term, the negative impact to the district as a whole was a lot more substantial than, maybe prior to COVID. I don't know that the budget was necessarily balanced, prior to that, but it looked like it was closer anyway. I guess, do you have any feelings one way or another? We kind of talked about some of these topics, over the last 10 years, but I don't recall what the numbers look like from, 2017, 16, 15, et cetera. But I just didn't know if you had any more historical perspective, or if not right now, maybe that could be added to future discussion too.
Yeah. Before I get yelled at, let me pull that closer. Not yelled at, but gently nudged. Yeah, so I did provide I believe it was a 6-year comparison of the history on the athletic fund. It has, to my knowledge, never been a self-sustaining operation. Looking back, historically, when you get into some of the prior years, I went back to the 2017, 2018 year, all the way through about the 2019, 2020 years. So those 3 years, the shortfall for athletics was between 315,000 to 362,000 per year that the general fund made up for that shortfall. Now we're looking at about, I would say probably about 420 to 440,000 a year now in annual shortfall over the last few years for athletics. So the general fund has been picking up a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to athletics than it had previously. So you are on point.
So you're hoping that it would at least maybe stabilize though, and maybe go back to that 300 to 350 range?
Ideally, that'd be nice to see. Yeah, it would. Again, to your point, COVID did have an impact, and as we move further away, further away from the COVID years, hopefully we'll see that come back down a little bit, as far as the amount that the general fund is supporting athletics. But yeah, even if it stabilized at this level, that would be, nice to see at least having some stability. But yeah, it would be nice to go back to a pre-COVID level.
So, Mr. Tizio, when we have students, certainly sports like hockey, where we see, and now soccer, I think it's becoming more and more on trend, where we have our littles in these sports, as young as 3 or 4, and then they're kind of streamlining into more elite athletics in high school, as opposed to probably the way many of us went through the sports programs when we were high school athletes, where we played a couple of sports and maybe went to a couple of camps, but we're not playing specific sports year-round at high-level camps. What do we do with our kiddos that cannot we have scholarships, right, to cover the pay-to-play. Beyond that, can we support, or in what ways do we support the economically at-risk students?
For economically at-risk students right now, our policy has been is a 50% waiver for any student on the reduced lunch plan, and a complete waiver for anybody on a free lunch plan. So that is how we've been operating under our current policy.
And that takes care of the pay-to-play fee. Does it take care of anything else? I mean,
In terms of equipment, all of our coaches do a phenomenal
I'm
job
sure.
of helping assist anybody that has those kind of
Okay.
needs. But in terms of things
I know we didn't necessarily have enough time to prepare all of this information coming into tonight. I think tonight was going to be more of like a preliminary starting point. I know I would also like to see, I think before we decide on specific numbers, what sort of impact that would have to the bottom line of the district. You know, again, if it's going to be stabilized currently without any changes at $300,000 to $350,000 annual operating expense to fund our athletics, you know, what does that look like if we go with a $200 scholarship or, you know, maybe a couple of different options? But I think we need to see what that impact would ultimately have on the district general fund before we just kind of pick something, I guess. But it'd be definitely very nice to offer some relief in that capacity for sure.
Mr. Lampman, one more question, and maybe this is kind of an open question, but when we're talking about the 40% of Michigan school districts that aren't charging, what are they? What's the juju they've got?
60% are
Okay,
not.
I'm sorry, 60%.
40% are.
40% are. Okay, excuse me. So when we talk about the 60% of Michigan school districts that aren't charging any sort of pay-to-play fee, what do they have going on? Like, what's working for them? How does that work? Are they just all much larger and more economically prosperous areas? I can't believe that's true.
Yeah, I guess I can't speak to what's going on with 60% of the other districts without, you know,
Sure, yeah.
reviewing their financial position. My guess is their general fund is probably doing the same thing. They're just making up the difference out of their general fund, and you know, it speaks to tax base, it speaks to student population,
Sure.
what their per pupil foundation is. You know, it's hard to make
Sure.
that comparison.
Yeah, I in no way meant to put you on the spot. It's just such a big number that it makes me, Mr. Tizio, could you give me any, could you clarify that at all with such a large?
Again, all this information was taken from the MHSA survey, which is conducted annually.
Sure.
In each academic year. And so, and it's looking at number of schools just in terms of sheer numbers. And so the biggest variance that you see between school to school in the MHSA structure is obviously enrollment. So you've got
Sure.
schools, small schools.
Right.
Within that, obviously, us with the enrollment that we have here in the UP, we are very much an outlier in the UP. We're very much an outlier in the MHSA overall. And so we are by far the biggest school in the UP. And then you're looking at number of sports sponsored. which
Sure.
Sponsor an awful lot.
Sure.
And then on top of that, the number of teams within those sports, you know, we are still fortunate to be at 3 levels of competition.
Sure.
For a lot of our sports with freshman, JV, and varsity teams. And so once you're taking a look at all of that, you know, we're in a pretty small pool within the MHSA
Sure.
in terms of those schools like us.
Okay.
And then to further compound that, no school has the travel issues that we do.
Sure.
And that's when you're
Absolutely.
looking at where our expenditures are currently coming from. A lot of them are travel based.
Because we're having to go to Gaylord at closest.
And back when, so the pay-to-play fee was initiated during the 93-94 school year. Back then, you had the days where you could, you know, tow the equipment trailer behind the school bus and you were okay to get your football team there that way. That doesn't fly anymore.
Sure.
And so same thing with when you're talking about hockey team, you're talking about golf and golf bags and things like that. Right now,
Mackinac Bridge fees.
We've got about 80% of our students here at MSHS participating in at least one athletics team.
Sure.
And of that 80% grouping, you've got about the same that participate in at least one additional sport. You know,
Sure.
we've led the state in multi-sport participation. So, you know, we've got a lot of good problems here within our athletics teams, and just with the sheer participation levels.
And Alex, maybe it's worth noting that you mentioned the equipment, hockey, football, golf. Sometimes that requires us to reserve a different bus rather than using even a school bus. And the costs associated
Sure.
with that is significant.
And when you're looking at those post-COVID expenses versus pre-COVID expenses, there was nothing impacted quite like the cost of travel was.
I bet. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
What's the total we collect each year in fees? What's that number again?
Yeah, we had provided the
Yeah.
board some budget information, and I don't necessarily have
No,
that
that's okay. I
off
was
the cuff,
forgetting
but
what
there's
the
a
total
pretty good
number was.
breakdown for you.
I've got a breakdown in front of me, Mr. Sarka, if you are interested. The highlighted area under dues and fees ranges between 84,000 to 121,000 over the course. It varies.
Yep.
I am curious about one of the things that Mr. Zedunick mentioned would be the allowing our students to go to athletic events. I know that's something that I had mentioned a few years before. I mean, is that something that we could look at? Because, I mean, we talk about school spirit and being able to cheer on your fellow student. But, you know, for some people to pay $5, $10 a time to go to an event, it adds up.
There is a cost on the budget sheet for that as well. Looks like ranges from about 73,000 to 80,000, 85,000 approximately.
Right. Well, I mean, it appears that our athletics are not making us money. So,
Right, I'm just saying that information we have in that
No, I know.
budget breakdown.
I have a question.
We don't know how much is being allocated or being spent on by current student body, though, right? That's just the. Yeah.
Right,
That's- That's just tickets in general.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
that there's probably any way to track that based on my knowledge of admissions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
no, I mean, I think at one point in time we were charging students, I think it was $50 a year to get an all sports booster pass to go to any sporting event. But again, even that $50 could be cost prohibitive to some students to be able to go to the sporting events. And I know in other districts that they do allow their students to go free of charge to the athletic events.
And obviously with the changes, depending on if everyone's on board with the scholarship opportunity and or the change in the cost for attendance for full-time MAPS employees and students to attend the sporting events, we'll be able to see what that impact is because this is very trackable with the scholarship opportunity. It's a set amount. So we'll be able to take a look if we did decide to move forward with that to see where that is. If it's not a significant impact, maybe, you know, look to help out a little bit more or just keep it the same, but at least we'll know where that is. And then obviously that's something that we could look to potentially address at a later time, but at least a starting point to take a look to see what that would do. And I think would really help out a lot of kids. And I think it would be a nice win for the district as far as getting some participation to in all the opportunities across the district that we offer.
Can you go a little bit more into the scholarship component per student, $200? I mean, what that would look like? I had questions about that.
So,
There.
it would be an opportunity for $200 to cover the first part of any sport. So again, let's say right now we're charging about $250 for JV varsity football. So each student would have a scholarship opportunity. So that cost to that student would, instead of $250 from that family, would be $50.
Are we going to, I mean, are you talking
One
about
time.
limiting a number of scholarships that are available? Or are you saying this for every single student that wants to participate, they get a scholarship up to 200?
Every student gets one opportunity annually. So
So we have what, 1,000 students at the high school, roughly? So $200,000 for scholarships.
how many students participate? You said about 75%,
Right.
80% to participate in one, so.
It would just be for the first sport. So I would like to, bring to the table too that, and I don't know what the costs are for all of this as well, but to single out athletics, I mean, I'm an athlete. I didn't play any music and am not musically inclined. My one daughter did. I don't know what those costs are within the way of the arts and music and like the robotics, all of these other components that, those all have costs as well, right? The, what is it? What did you just say? Yeah, right, the high school bowl, all of those things as well as kind of part of this component. I don't know what those are, but I'd like to be able to have that knowledge as well and figure out how we incorporate that too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're doing a $200 scholarship, that maybe it was $200 to be used towards athletics.
Any
or
extracurricular,
activities.
yep. Yeah, I love that.
So that then everyone gets a chance to have something back.
And encourage them to get involved.
The data is so clear on the importance of having kids connected to school. It's really, above reproach. And so I couldn't agree more. I would just love to know I hadn't even thought about that. If you want to be part of the robotics club, what are you paying up front? If you want to do quiz
What are those
bowl.
costs?
But-
Yeah, I don't know.
Now we have this esports. Does that fall under our athletic budget? No, right? I mean, there's just so many ways for kids to get
Involved.
connected right now, and holy cow, do we need kids to be connected?
Or kids going on a HOSA trip or some
Exactly.
government field
Right.
trip that
Exactly.
has costs associated with it where
Sure. Yep.
we could let them apply that to some of those other activities.
Student
beyond
government.
athletics.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And I would like to kind of, I don't know exactly where they get their, well, I do know they have a lot of money coming in of community donations. And we're talking Evanston, which is now a wealthy suburb of Chicago. But I just went through high school that I went to for 3 years, 2 years. And their state-of-the-art gymnasium, well, no, not even gymnasium, weight room was based off of Alabama University and looked like the one that I walked through at University of Michigan. So there's a difference in these different schools just based on property taxes, money, and amount per student. And it's significant, and it's not equitable as it should be. And I'd like to kind of figure out how we can help with that within our community.
One thing that's nice about the scholarship, not only would it not necessarily target just the athletics budget, but kind of like Mr. Hewitt and Mr. Lampin were discussing, it could really be more of an overall general fund expense. And depending on the financial status from one year to the next, we could adjust those amounts to offset budget shortfalls or surpluses. And it could be a little more fluid, maybe a little easier to pivot than if we were to just target individual or family caps for just athletics. That would be, I would say, very hard to walk back once we went down that road, whereas something like this is a little bit, again, more fluid.
Well, I guess I just like the fact that I just think that we're not trying to make money off of our students, whether it's through the arts or through athletics. I mean, that's not why we're running a district, is to make money off of our students. So I just think that if we can find a way to have them still be able to participate and feel a part of their school community and the community as a whole, that's money well spent.
Yes. Well, and you've got involvement of going and supporting each other. That's all, we're talking about mental health. This is all about mental health right here. And it's any way to get them engaged and participating and feeling part of something greater than themselves. And I think that's critical.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous.
Alex, do you have ideas as far as attendance rates for, across the sports? Do you have any idea as far as, where they're at? I mean, is our gym kind of like 50% full on average for volleyball, basketball, across the board? Best guess.
It varies from year to year. And
For sure.
how good, that student leadership is, it is in that student section, and ultimately how fun it is. But, I will say particularly coming out of COVID, our students are very much there to support each other. So it's a great thing to see, and, yeah, thanks everything.
I would imagine it probably also has to do with like what night of the week we're talking about. You might not get the same level on a Tuesday night that you do it under Friday Night Lights, and everyone's ready to celebrate the weekend. But every kid I'm talking to at MAPS is, in the district in total, whether it's at the Alt or whether it's at Bothwell or here at the high school, people are pretty jazzed to be back at it and really hearing really good things from the kids I talk to.
So this is just a starting idea. Obviously, I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, and I know part of this process is just coming up with a baseline of where to start and putting that idea out there. Obviously, if somebody has a better idea on how to do this, I like the $200 scholarship opportunity idea because it's trackable, and as Mr. Sedgwick mentioned, it's adjustable depending on how we're doing. Maybe the district is, tough times ahead. That's something that need to be looked at, or maybe there's a windfall coming. We can do something different, and obviously that would keep in place the current pay-to-play fee structure. Also, I think with increasing attendance opportunities, not only for our staff to come support the students, but for the students to come support the students, I think that would be pretty neat as well. But again, I'm certainly open to discussions if somebody sees something differently or has an opportunity for.
So would that put our highest, if it was, your recommendation is 200, is that what we're talking about? Okay, so that would put, and hockey's at 6. So that's a discount.
So it would be about a 33% discount opportunity for hockey, or it might cover other, for example, I think fall sideline cheer was $100, so somebody would be able to have the opportunity to not have to pay to do that. Or cross country is $175, that would be covered. Obviously, if that individual participated in another opportunity down the road, there would be a cost associated with that, but at least help out, with that first level. Some of that family cap too. Again, that $800 is certainly a lot higher than what the median report showed. So obviously, then it would help to reduce that family cap, in a sense, to bring us a little bit more in line with what that survey showed amongst other districts.
I think it'd be great if we could include our alternative high school if we want to target grades 9 through 12, just to make sure they are able to participate in this opportunity as well as they're involved in activities, much like the MSHS. I want to say thank you to Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Tizio for coming tonight. I know you have another event, so by all means, if you need to duck out, I totally get it, but really appreciate you coming. They did that on fairly short notice so that they could be available to answer questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Bringing this up.
To Jason for raising that,
Yeah.
because that wasn't an issue that was necessarily on our radar last year.
Yeah, and good suggestions. All right, moving on to the rebranding process. I think as of this morning, we had around 1,400 submissions through SurveyMonkey. And then we've had obviously emails and phone calls and snail mail come through, some postcards, some colorful suggestions. So, I mean, once you kind of break them down and like take out some of the doubles, I mean, I think we have maybe still like 300 unique. Well, maybe not quite that many, but we still have, I have several pages full of unique ones that have been submitted. So I think the next thing to start thinking about, I mean, this goes until the 17th of November, so we still have 2 weeks left of submissions, would be how to get all of this down to a slightly more manageable number. Because otherwise we'll be doing this for the next 10 years, going through all the different names. So I'm not sure if anyone had any any ideas or some thoughts? I know that it was suggested that maybe we give some of these to advisories at the high school and maybe have them do give them 10 names or 20 names and say, give us your top 2 out of this for your advisory. And then, so it whittles it down to a slightly more manageable list.
Is there, you had said that, not the emails, because those are coming in, you'd have to hand count them. But SurveyMonkey does kind of tally. So, I, of course, love, anytime you talk about kids happening in a classroom, I get really excited. But it does seem like, taking a look at our, I don't know what the number is, but top 10 or top 20 and not voting for it, but throwing that back and reducing it, giving people an opportunity to vote on their favorite 3, getting it down to 5, and maybe that's what we're, looking at. But a way just to kind of go through that process and condense.
Or even top 30 or 40. I mean, have
Sure.
those top
but
numbers.
then you'd have to
Exactly.
keep going back and shaming her off.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I took the ones that we had, I alphabetized them, so that then at least I could see if someone
Repeat,
spelled
yeah.
Red Hawks and different ways that they were all grouped together,
Sure.
or whatever, and then just kind of went through and then try to take out some of the duplicates, and it looks like I missed a few, but
Did we put posters in the schools? Do I recall that? Did we do that at all for the students yet? No?
I don't know if we did.
All that
or-
visible voting that was recommended.
Right. I think I like this idea. I mean, and if they had, another one to add to it, but not to, they could add 2 of their, have a space where they could add, if they're not on there, just 2 extra spots if they were to come up with, so that they're able to bring something to the table too. But I like the idea of, in the advisory classroom, that, they've got these numbers, narrow it down to 10 or something.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, there's still 2 weeks left of people being able
Yeah.
to do submissions. But I mean, we have quite a few names.
Well, that's
And there's some
Amazing.
there's some
That's awesome.
some neat ones in here. So
I will say didn't walk the halls to see posters, but I saw it on their announcements. It's widely advertised, and the kids are very excited.
That's what I thought too. That I knew we were getting it out there some way. Couldn't remember how. Awesome, thank you. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I think that the students and the community as a whole definitely got the information to be able to make submissions. And I would say, judging by the 1,400 submissions, that people have gotten the message and are I mean, it's great to see the community engaged. I mean, 1,400 submissions, that's pretty darn good.
I mean, we've had a few, 200-300 emails, haven't we? So you're talking almost,
Oh, for sure.
so
For sure.
1,700-1,800. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, a couple weeks more for submissions, but then once that closes, we're going to have some kind of a process to get from 15, 1,600 submissions to, something that we can actually deal with.
Yeah, I personally don't know if my feeling has necessarily changed on that because of what we kind of anticipated with all the huge variety that we knew that could come in. And in addition to that, for whatever reason, you could certainly have, a certain number of community groups that are really organized and banded together to suggest, one name strongly more than just one. So I don't know, because I think all of us we were hesitant to have the students, pick one for us, right? We didn't want it to be a vote.
They wouldn't pick one.
Right.
They would just maybe narrow it down to, because each advisory would have a different set of names.
Sure.
So that, they each have a different set of, let's say, 20. And then they would pick through the 20 that they have, because I think there's like 30 advisories or something.
So not each advisory would have the same
No.
list of 20.
No.
So you're whittling it down from.
Yes. I mean, that was the thought anyway, is that,
And then ultimately, it would come back to us
right,
to make the final.
the whittled down version would come
Yeah.
back to us, and then we'd look at them and go, yeah, I like that, or ooh, yeah, and then we could try to narrow it down, and then, maybe we send it back to the community in a different Survey Monkey or something. Here's the top 10 or whatever, and not have it be, and again, not have it be a popularity contest, but just, like what's rising to the top. What are some that is some names that are speaking to people that they're like, ooh, that sounds good. I mean, you go down the list and you're like, ooh, yeah, I could see that, or ooh, I like that.
There are so many on there that I would have never thought. Even through those emails, you're like, that is absolutely nothing I would have thought of. But I particularly
today we got
appreciate that when the community's members actually tell us why.
Oh, right, yes.
I so appreciate the community for engaging to the degree that they're engaging. I am just very impressed.
Would having advisory do that be disruptive, or is that a proper kind of procedure for doing that?
I think we could find a appropriate and minimally disruptive way of having the students give input. I think there's a way of maybe breaking down the long list into groups, a random sort. Random is always very nice. There's different ways we could do that and let them help us whittle it down. I think that would be very doable.
The educator in me can't help but think it would also be a nice little mini lesson on building consensus, the actual process of consensus building, as opposed to just pivoting to raw numbers and votes. It is, one of the, I don't want to call it standard, but one of the things that is prevalent in the Michigan, state curriculum is not even the right word I'm looking for, but just going through that process of consensus. And I think we can probably all agree that listening to each other occasionally in the current climate that we have never hurts, at least practicing that.
And I think updating people on what the list is a good idea, because it's going to build excitement about it. I don't know so much, like you said, about putting it back out for a vote, but I think it would be great to say, hey, we're down to 50 names, we're down to 30 names, we're down to 10 names, something like that, just so that when we do reveal it, there's a little more excitement about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're definitely not going to do it in a vacuum. I mean, I think the community will know what the top names are and stuff, and working through the process to try to come up with what the final selection is going to be.
But there's two things that immediately come. If we just keep kind of whittling it down, we go from 100 to 75 to 50 to, I'm afraid we're A, going to get fatigue, and B, it would draw it out for a very, very long time. And anytime we can get, especially in this issue, input from kids, it's worth it.
Well, and to your point, Mr. Hewitt, I think that we definitely don't want it to be like, it's pitting the students against each other, trying to come up with a name. And that's why I think if maybe the advisories had, let's say 20 different names to just pick through, that then there wouldn't be that pressure on the students, because they're just picking two names to be considered, not like the ultimate name. What do you think?
I don't have any issue with the idea at all. The only thing that in the back of my mind slightly concerns me is when we were kind of having these initial discussions in August and September, it sounded like we kind of wanted to take that away completely. Or on the flip side of that coin, would the community want to have that opportunity instead of, like you said, bringing it back to the community? I know it just logistically, it would be a nightmare to say, okay, here's now 600 names, community, now whittle it down from there. I don't want to do that. I think this was a more concise and expedited way to whittle it down. Just wanted to make sure that the community wouldn't feel, included in that whittle down process. That's, again, I didn't necessarily like, the only way I thought about this logically back in August was when we get all of the submissions in, each board member has, taken these months to listen and absorb all the information, and then come back, and then we each have our one submission to present. So then it would be it's not an easy way to whittle it down, but it's on our shoulders to say, I'm a board member, here's my submission. We now have potentially 7 finalists. If there's duplicates, maybe there's 4 or 5, whatever. But that, I'm not opposed to it, just saying why I was thinking we were kind of staying with that process. So,
Yeah, I mean, I
Can we
think,
do kind of both, though? Where we limit, where the kids kind of whittle it down to whatever that number is going to be 10. And then, to your point, then we take what we sit around and think about it, and then we make our case.
and I think, as a board member, if the kids whittle it down and one of the ones that we are absolutely in love with isn't on the list, then we have the veto. We can put our suggestion in to be considered with the top whatever amount of names.
Careful with
Yeah.
that. I think we had a history of that in 2000 where
Well, not that we wouldn't do what we did with the logo that was picked, where we would, trump over everything else. But I think that if there's one that we liked and we're passionate about, that we could put it to the top 10, top 20, or whatever. And if it gets knocked down, then it gets knocked down.
that's what I'm saying. It's just,
Well, no, I mean, I don't think any one of us would want to be like, no, you guys are awful. We're not picking the ones that you gave us and doing that. But, I think that, yes, through this process and, just even being in the community for however long, or being a board member for however long, I mean, we're getting ready to go on our 10th year here. And, we've heard a lot of great suggestions. And do I have a personal favorite? Maybe. Is it one that might ultimately get picked? I have no idea. But, we're one of 7. But I just think that if there's a name that you're really passionate about, that can put it forward. And if it wins, yay. If not, then,
So to your point, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is our goal right now, our focus has to be facilitators. It doesn't have to be, we cannot be champions of a specific nickname. It's that we are helping facilitate this process and making sure that it's transparent and that we have as much input as we can get without tasking kids with making a decision that, is, well, right, or is just too much responsibility for a 16-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to pull a what was it, 1999, where they get all the way to the final submission for a logo, and then they say, oh, no, we're not going to go with that one. I mean, no. I mean, that wouldn't be fair to the students, the community, everyone else.
I just think it brings them into the process. And again, the transparency of it all, it gives them an opportunity to have a voice. They narrow it down, and then we go from there. I mean, obviously we have, I don't know how many names in there, at least 1,000, some duplicates, but they can help us narrow that down to 50. Great, and then we narrow it down again or something.
So that might be a good point to set that parameter then, because if you said there's 30 advisories, seems like we'd only have to say we got to have a top 2, right, from each advisory to make it to 60 for to start with?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. Do you want to do top 2 or top 3 for advisory? Top 2.
Agreed.
Top 2.
Yeah, I think 2.
top 2.
I was definitely ballparking on the number of advisories. So before you go too far.
Well, I think it's, I think if it's 20 or 40, I think the top 2 would be the appropriate number. I don't want to be at 100. So
No. No, I mean, I think top 2 is definitely doable, and it at least gives us a starting point. Because I mean, it's like I said, it's like you look at some of the different names and you're like, oh, yeah, that's kind of neat, and then you get like on to the next page, you're like, oh, I like that one too. You know, I mean, our community is very
Creative.
creative for sure,
Creative, I
very
was gonna say
creative.
that. There's some on there I never would have even thought of. Like,
No,
would you want
and
to
it's just-
nickname that? Oh.
And you're like, oh,
Cool.
I can see it. I can picture it. You know, so I think that it would be good to have like it narrowed down just a little bit to have a starting point. So otherwise, I think we'll be overwhelmed immediately just trying to go through all the names.
I think it's really important too to have the kids having a voice in this. I think they'll be excited and owning the process a little bit with us, which is nice.
Yeah, and it also allows them to have a voice, but also takes the burden off of them
Absolutely.
to make
Right.
the ultimate decision. So I don't know. Does anyone have any further comments on the rebranding process? Mr. Zdunek, kind of quiet over there. No. All right. Moving on to other. Do we have any other? No. Comments from the public? I don't think we had any slips turned in. All right, board member comments. Mr. Zdunek?
I think we covered a lot of what I was hoping to with the addressing some of the pay-to-play issues. So hopefully, looking forward to continuing that conversation, and I think that'll be a win for the school. So win for the community, win for the kids. So
Ms. Ray?
Just thank you, Jason, for bringing that to the table, because I really do think it's something that is kind of important to be looking at, especially as we talk about mental health issue and stuff, and how do we help the kids and the hurdles that are in front of them to kind of engage and be a part of things, and to be able to go to events as well as participate in them. And I appreciate this new format. Thank you, Kristen. This is really, really helpful and engaging for us as well. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Maddox-Smith?
I agree with Jen. I like this committee of the whole. I like the discussion and the ideas. It just feels really good. I really appreciate Jason bringing the pay to play. I think that was a lot of great information, a lot of good discussion. I look forward to seeing more on that and what we can do. The rebranding is pretty amazing. I've read through the submissions too, and every day I have a new favorite. It's just pretty cool. I like the way we're going with it, and I look forward to how it's all going to play out.
Mrs. Klipp?
Just again to echo what everyone's said. Thank you so much, Jason. That was first of all, it made a lot more sense than that pay-to-play survey PDF we got. I could not make heads nor what's the expression? Heads nor tails of it. So I appreciate the clarity on that, and I do agree. I really appreciate this format, both as an individual board member, and I'm hoping it's helpful to the public as well. So thank you all the way around.
Mr. Hewitt?
Everything's already been said. Nothing further.
Mr. Sarka?
When do we start meeting at night? That's what I want to know. Holy cow. Anyways, I was thinking about the scholarship idea, and I would imagine one of the effects that may not come through or may not be so obvious in the numbers is you might get that kid who's thinking about a sport or thinking about an activity, and their parents are like, not sure, may not have the money, may not qualify for a scholarship, but if it gets them into that sport that year, they might be a 4-year player, or they might be on the robotics team for 4 years. And that can make a huge difference in a kid's life. Looking back at kids I went to school with, or kids I coached or worked with in activities. So if it could be that catalyst, I think that could be really powerful. And I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Okay. Board president comments? Nothing further. I don't know. I like this format. I think that the committee of the whole, that it's working well, and it's great to have everyone facing each other this time. so that we can actually have a discussion. So
Like Family Feud when you look at it. We need to have the superintendent be, what's his name?
so so no, I appreciate this. Announcements and other meetings. November 8th, 2023, parent-teacher conferences, K through 5, half day. November 9th, 2023, parent-teacher conferences, K through 12, half day. November 10th, K through 12, half day. MSHS musical Beauty and the Beast at Kaufman Auditorium at 7 o'clock. November 11th, the musical again, Beauty and the Beast at Kaufman at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. November 22nd through the 24th, Thanksgiving holiday, no school. And then our next regular board meeting is November 27th, 2023 at the high school library at 5:30. And now I would, do I have to entertain a motion? Okay, I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
I'll make the motion to recess to closed session.
I was packing up like we were done.
Second.
Who's,
I second.
okay. Okay. So the motion was made by Mr. Hewitt, support by Mrs. Maddox Smith, and roll call, please, Linda.
Kristen Kembenzi,
Yes.
Len Sarka,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Jennifer Cliff,
Yes.
Jennifer Ray,
Yes.
Cheryl Maddox Smith,
Yes.
Jason Zadunik,
Yes.
All right, and then we are going to recess to closed session.